Bruno Mars was only 4 years old when most kids were still learning to read. He was already doing 2 shows a night, 5 days a week, while other kids played with toys. They were a family band in Waikiki, and he became their star. His tiny glitter jumpsuit made people call him Little Elvis. He moved just like Elvis Presley, like it was his natural talent. When he was only 5 years old, he stole the show at the Aloha Bowl halftime show in front of 40,000 people because he was so good. He was 6 years old when he went on the Arsenio Hall show. This was followed by a small part in the 1992 movie Honeymoon in Vegas, which paid $600 for one day's work. He later made a joke that it was his first time living in Las Vegas. He had done almost 1,000 shows before he turned 10. Beginnings like that make you feel something deep down. Perhaps that's why, many years later, he said that practicing for the Super Bowl halftime show felt like playing outside. Things weren't always so bright, though. Bruno was 12 years old when his parents split up, ending their family act. There was no stage, no lights, and no money all of a sudden. He, his dad, and his brother slept anywhere they could find a place to do so. There were times when they were in a yellow '93 Cadillac on Waikiki roofs, and even in an empty bird zoo where peacocks screamed all night. Their bathroom wasn't working, so they'd sneak into hotel pools to take a shower. It was common to eat just Spam musubi from 7-Eleven for dinner. They did not have power for 5 months. He practiced guitar at night because they didn't have enough money for amps. Kids at school made fun of him for wearing clothes from a thrift store. Bruno didn't give up, though. He worked as Michael Jackson for $75 a night to pay for sound tapes and bus fare. He became tough after that fight. Labels said he should be the next Ricky Martin after hearing his demo in 2003. He had to sing in Spanish for them. Despite not writing in Spanish, he did not want that to happen. A record company didn't want him to be their idea of a Latin singer. So, he chose the name Bruno, which came from his youth. Bruno Sammartino, a famous boxer, was the inspiration, and he added Mars. For what reason? Since a girl told him he was so sure of himself once. "You definitely come from Mars." His move to Los Angeles in June 2003 was when he was 18. His suitcase tag only said Bruno Mars and had $600, 3 demo CDs, and his name written on it. For different places gave him a home in his first year. Some of them were a $40 a night motel on Sunset and a small room in Koreatown that he shared with 6 other guys. He lied his way into a job as a DJ on Van Nuys Boulevard to make money, even though he had never used DJ gear before. It was his last night on the job, but the $75 he made kept his phone from being turned off. During that summer, he only ate Jack-in-the-Box tacos for 99 cents for a few weeks. Motown made him a deal in February 2004, lengthened to 3 pages. He joked that he had seen breakfast plates that were thicker. It was unclear what to do with him for the label. They were looking for a Latin pop artist. They fired him after 9 months without putting out a single song. It made me look bad. He had already told his family back home that he was signed, but it was lucky that he didn't get the job. At the same time, Philip Lawrence was released by Motown. They started to be friends. They vowed to make music that record companies would not be able to ignore. Bruno and Philip were poor and desperately wanted to succeed by 2006. Philip's beat-up 1999 Toyota Corolla was parked in front of a small Hollywood studio while they wrote songs. The studio was run by Ari Levine. He was prepared. Bruno and Philip thought of some things. Paying him would be getting him burritos from 7-Eleven. When a beat or chord felt good, they would yell, "That's a smeeze." This is how they got their name, the Smeezingtons. They studied hit songs and learned how to write their own for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. Before they even put out one song, they learned more than 1,000 others. Later, Bruno's sister Hemi helped out. When she worked in fashion in West Hollywood, she gave a man named Mike Lynn one of his demo CDs. I worked with Mike for Dr. Dre. The voice sounded strange, like a mouse, so he almost threw away the CD at first. Unfortunately, Bruno hit a high note 43 seconds and that made Mike pause and play the song again. For a meeting at Record One Studios, he flew Bruno there. If someone important had seen Bruno, even though they didn't make a deal, it gave him a huge boost. In Los Angeles, everything can change if you see the right person. To get money to stay alive, they sold Menudo a song they had written for themselves called Lost. Their effort was just enough to keep them from being evicted. They got famous when they wrote the song for Flo Rida's Right Round. That week, 636,000 copies of the song were downloaded. Those were computer records back then. One more hit was Nothing on You by B.O.B. Bruno's 2010 album. Just the Way You Are was the 15th time that songs he helped make had sold more than 15 million downloads. It didn't happen overnight that Bruno Mars became famous. It's Better If You Don't Understand, a Blink and You Miss It EP, was the first thing he did on his own. Few people noticed when it came out on May 11th, 2010, for songs in just 13 minutes. In the US, it had only sold 27,000 copies by the end of 2011. The thing looked small and even forgotten. However, that short EP had songs that would be the foundation of something much bigger. 5 months later, on October 4th, 2010, he put out Do Waps and Hooligans. I felt that one hit me hard. The album went 7x platinum in the US. It cost $70,000 to make and didn't use any clips from other albums, and made over 15 million sales around the world by 2020. Plus, it stayed on the official music chart in the UK for 400 weeks straight. It's been almost 8 years, longer than either Abbey Road or Thriller. Then there were the songs. Just the Way You Are, his first single, made it to #1 on the Billboard Hot 108 weeks after it came out on August 7th, 2010. 88 weeks on the chart, it went 13 times platinum. It became one of the top 25 digital songs of all time in the US, where it sold 6.7 million copies. The next one was Grenade. The week it was most popular, 559,000 people downloaded it. At the time, that was the 8th highest weekly gain in music history. In addition to the US, it was the #1 song in 15 other countries as well. That was not the end of it. 3 times between January and March 2011, Grenade was #1 on Billboard. Only 5 other songs have ever done that. Bruno had 2 songs that had sold more than 5 million copies in the US by March 2011. His predecessor in that role was Lady Gaga. The music business took note. He was nominated for 7 Grammys in his first year, including Album and Song of the Year. That hadn't been given to a man's solo debut since Lauryn Hill's. The biggest awards didn't go to him, but his song, Just the Way You Are, won Best Male Pop Voice. That made him the youngest man to win that award since Stevie Wonder in 1974. He was soon named Billboard's top Hot 100 artist. According to the IFPI, he was the best-selling act in the world in 2011. He even beat Adele's late-year surge. Nonetheless, he wasn't finished. They released Locked Out of Heaven in October 2012. It started out slowly and got to number 34 on the charts. Later it went up. It became #1 in just 11 weeks and stayed there for 6 weeks in a row from December 22, 2012 to January 26, 2013. Bruno was the first male solo act since Bobby Vinton in 1964 to get 4 #1 songs on the Hot 100 in his first 2 years. No one did that, not even Michael Jackson. Likewise, sales kept up. The song went 10 times platinum and had 1 million downloads in the US in just 10 weeks. After some time, Spotify streams went over 1.8 billion. It was a surprise to the critics. According to Rolling Stone, it was the Police rebirth that no one asked for, but everyone needed. Suddenly, that reggae rock beat broke up all the EDM that had been dominating the charts. Bruno changed the sound of pop radio in less than 4 minutes. In an early stage, Unusual Jukebox wasn't meant to be crazy. The record company was hoping for a tight, catchy dance album. However, Bruno and his team secretly made the idea bigger. They tried 9 different styles, from the disco shimmer of Treasure to the bold, sexy rock of Gorilla, and even reggae with Show Me. This made the label very nervous. In one note, it was said that radio stations wouldn't play a record this crazy. Bruno refused to give up. To pay for live horns and old gear, he even gave up 4% of his future earnings. It worked out to take the chance. Within a year, 6 million copies of the record had been sold around the world. Some critics were shocked. As reported by Spin magazine, it was like listening to a radio at 3 a.m. Crazy and interesting. Artists like Dua Lipa and Harry Styles would later follow Bruno's lead in combining different types of music. More fireworks showed up at the 2014 Grammys. It won 3 awards, including Best Pop Vocal Album. It was found by engineers that each song had more than 120 separate audio tracks. This was more than any other nominee that year, and even more than Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. A 0.6-second video clip of Bruno thumping his chest was the subject of a complaint to the FCC that same night during his guerrilla act. The point was to look like a rebel. He wasn't fined, but it did put him in the Guinness World Records for the fastest act on TV to lead to an obscenity review in 2015. Sales really went up after the Grammys. The chart position of Unorthodox Jukebox increased by 171%. That gave the Grammy week a huge boost since Alanis Morissette in the 1990s. This was followed by Uptown Funk. It all began as a jam session in a temporary studio on May 1st, 2014. Mark Ronson still keeps the first version of the song marked up in his email as a voice memo. The last song took 11 writers and 5 cases to finish. It came out on November 10th, 2014. On January 17th, 2015, it went straight to number 1 and stayed there for 14 weeks, until April 18th, 2015. Prior to Old Town Road, that was the decade's longest run of number 1 songs. It sold 300,000 downloads a week at its peak, and 15 million people listened to it every day around the world. It exceeded 1 million copies sold in 10 weeks in the UK, making it the fastest-selling jazz-influenced song since I Feel Good in 1965. It was an obsession. Delta Airlines said that the number of first-class drink orders went up by 37% the month it became their arrival song. The airline called it Uptown Drunk. The BBC even used how fast the song was going to get CPR training for a 2015 show. Although, his next big move almost didn't happen. The label didn't like Bruno's 24K Magic when he turned it in 2016. The 33-minute album had only 9 tracks, which is less than some EPs. But Bruno was set in his ways. It had to sound like a party mixtape from the 1990s, with no skips. There were a lot of winners at the Grammys on January 28, 2018. Award winners for 24K Magic include Album, Record, and Song of the Year. This is only the second R&B record of the decade to do all 3. Received 6 awards in a single evening. The effects were seen right away. There were 130% more streams of That's What I Like, and the song went 7x platinum. The record sold more than 5 million copies around the world by April 2018, but it never made it to number 1 on the Billboard 200. The trip that came next was just as crazy. The 24K Magic World Tour began in Antwerp on March 28, 2017, and finished in Honolulu on December 30, 2018. 215 shows from 6 countries were on it. Beyoncé's records were broken when he sold 48,000 Fun 183 tickets in Auckland, New Zealand, which was 4,100 more than her 2016 stop. The show made $367.7 million and sold 3.5 million tickets by the end. That made it one of the 10 most successful shows ever. It made even more money than the first U2 Joshua Tree Tour and Lady Gaga's Monster Ball. Every single song on 24K Magic was made with crazy care. Computer Love from 1987 was echoed in the talk box start of the title track. Babyface's 1994 hits could be heard in the smooth sounds in Versace on the Floor. To get that early 1990s sound, the remake of Finesse with Cardi B was mixed on a console that is 25 years old. The 9-track count wasn't even picked at random. Bruno said Bobby Brown's Don't Be Cruel cassette was his best. It had 9 songs on each side. They really liked it. Some said the record was pop's most valuable history lesson, while others said it brought funk back into the mainstream at a time when EDM drops were all the rage. His surprises kept coming. Bruno cut the hook for Gucci Mane's Wake Up in the Sky in less than 30 minutes in September 2018. It was released on September 14th. After reaching its highest point of number 11, it stayed on top. By July 2025, it had been streamed 1.4 billion times on Spotify, which is more than many number 1 hits that year. Las Vegas had finished for the night. It was full in the Dolby Live Theater. Bruno Mars stepped into the stage in a gold tux at 11:47 p.m. The room stopped talking. "Yes, Silk Sonic is real," he said. After a few seconds, the music began. An old, smooth song filled the room. Leave the Door Open was the name of the song in English. Everyone could hear it drop at exactly 12:01 a.m. There were more than just positive reactions. They cherished it. Within 4 weeks, it went from number 4 on Billboard to number 1. It stayed there for an entire 2 months. With over 2.3 billion streams on Spotify by the middle of 2022, the song was widely popular. Silk Sonic wasn't genuine. They could not be stopped. After a year, they went to the Grammys. There were two men dressed in white tuxedos. 18 string players were standing behind them, and Bootsy Collins was sitting on a velvet chair like a queen. The crowd got up when the song was over. Leave the Door Open won most popular record, song, and R&B act that night. In November, they released their record An Evening with Silk Sonic. The recording took place in a single room with no fancy tools. It was all analog. It really did sound like 1973. More than 104,000 vinyl records were sold in the first week alone. That was the biggest R&B solo album release in over 30 years. They were careful with everything they did. Bruno taped 16 different takes of just the snare drum for one song. It was 3:07 a.m. when Anderson .Paak played his last drum solo on 777. After hours of drinking and playing. Simply one take. That was all it needed. At the end of 2022, Silk Sonic's tour had made almost $145 million from 35 shows. That's $4 million every night. Some fans paid as much as $6,500 for a single ticket. The band is trying to sound old school, even though they are in the digital age. Then the surprise showed up. A message was sent by Bruno on August 16, 2024, at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone. Pack some tissues. It was unclear what would happen. After a few minutes, Lady Gaga smiled and dropped die. It was all over. As of today, 27.4 million people had played it online, which is a new record for streaming. That went beyond Adele's Easy on Me. The music video looked and felt like a movie. It was captured on old 16mm film. There were no colors. One Last Dance was made up of just two voices, a chandelier, and flashes of Morse code that fans eventually figured out. The song was #1 in 18 countries for 18 weeks in a row and sold over 32 million copies. Also, it made a lot of money, not just good for people to like. During its busiest week, it made almost $1 million a day from sales. Over $11 was worth every second of that song. A gospel band sat behind Bruno and Gaga as they sang it at the 2025 Grammys. When Bruno played a long, strong note that lasted more than 11 seconds, he was called a human saxophone. That incident became the most popular trend on Twitter. But was that the craziest part? It only took one take to record the last voice. There were 412 hours in the day. Bruno just broke a bottle of tequila against the wall of the studio. The glass breaking can be heard in the song at 318. He did not take it out. He talked about how it made the song sound real. That was followed by APT, a song by Blackpink featuring Rose. She got people excited about it on TikTok with a 9-second guitar riff. 42 million people watched it in 12 hours. It was the biggest K-pop female duet launch in history when the full song came out and went straight to #3 on the Billboard Hot 100. The neon-lit and flashing movie got 100 million views on YouTube in just 19 hours. That broke records. Rose was on stage at SoFi Stadium 9 months later when the lights went out. After that, Bruno showed up. The stadium went off. Recorders said it was louder than a jet engine while they sang APT. Fluttering 1.2 tons of confetti fell. The same night, Spotify said the song had 300 likes and more than 80% more streams than usual. After being out for almost a year, it was back near the top of the charts all of a sudden. Many people didn't know what APT stood for. Finally, Bruno told us what it was. Used after the party dance. He said it was inspired by a time in 2019 when he and Rose danced until dawn in Buenos Aires. A video of it exists, but Bruno has locked it in his phone. Laughing, he said that only Rihanna could open it. As of August 2025, more than 3 billion times had listened to the song. The performance brought in an extra 48 million won in merchandise sales for Blackpink's world tour. Bruno's popularity kept growing across all types of music. There was something more personal going on behind all the lights and music, though. In New York in the spring of 2011, Bruno met Jessica Cabin at a hotel diner. This was before the Grammys and tours. She had just come from an interview to be a model. He had a show just now. They looked into each other's eyes. He didn't move for 40 minutes. Eventually, he walked over. After the chairs were put away and the lights were turned off at 2 a.m., they kept talking. Less than a year later, she uprooted her life and moved across the country to be with him. It started out that she slept on an air mattress while he traveled the world, but they slowly made a life for themselves. Within 2014, they had a house in Studio City and a dog named Geronimo. Bruno avoided talking about her a lot. A single interview later, he called her my rock, and he was gone. He wouldn't say much about any of the songs, not even the sad one, When I Was Your Man. He said it felt like being sliced open. Numerous people thought he wrote it when things were not going well with Jessica. Her attendance at events was not common. No red carpets after 13 years. Fans also saw something strange in late 2024. The wedding posts she made went away. After some days, Bruno flew to Tokyo by himself. He had turned the gold chain she gave him around, so it was facing the wrong way, not to show her initials. After that, someone said something about Jessica's January 2025 beach picture. One of her fans asked if she and Bruno were done together. She responded that she would always be proud of all of his accomplishments. Not even 15 words, but cheering from afar. But that made the internet catch fire. Folks began to dig. Her folks took her to San Juan for Christmas. He entertained people in Las Vegas on New Year's Eve. Since 2006, it had been over 10 years since they had spent December apart. Reports said they were living different lives. Others said he tried to make things right, but ended up making his Vegas shows longer instead. But now comes the weird part. They never said they were breaking up. She still looks at his Instagram posts. He still enjoys the fashion line posts she makes. It's still a joint ownership. Others say she stays in the spare room when she comes to town. Some even said they saw her backstage at one of his May shows, but there's no picture released ever. On March 15, 2024, it all began. Some news on News Nation didn't cite any sources, but that didn't matter. There was so much crazy in the story that it caught fire. People said Bruno Mars owed MGM Resorts about $50 million because he had racked up debt from gaming. He was also said to be paying it off through his Park MGM residency shows. The internet blew up in just a few hours. Blogs about gossip kept repeating the number without question. Reddit threads were full of posts saying that MGM now pretty much owned him. There were also talk shows that talked about it. Shannon Sharpe even told the crowd that Bruno is said to have lost $17 million at blackjack in just one night. The picture was too good to be true. It didn't matter. A famous singer from around the world who sings about gold and wealth, but is actually stuck in a mountain of casino debt. It was made to make news stories go viral. The word Bruno broke was used all over the place in just 2 days. The search term, Bruno Mars 50 Millar for debt, suddenly turned up in more than 4 million Google results. All of it happened because of one false claim. Quickly, MGM Resorts replied that same day. To avoid confusion, make a clear statement instead of using general PR language. They mentioned to Forbes and Billboard that Bruno didn't need to pay them anything. They said exactly, no debt. In fact, they said that they respected each other in their relationship. It was also emphasized that Bruno was one of the best talents in the world. This wasn't just to keep his reputation safe. MGM had more important reasons. If people really thought their main story was drowning in debt, it might scare investors. In some cases, it could even be illegal. There were rumors going around that MGM faked the story to get more people to buy seats. However, their formal denial was strong enough to put an end to that idea. After 3 days, big news outlets like Variety said the same thing over and over, and MGM's stock price didn't change. They seemed to have Wall Street's trust. However, Bruno didn't put out a dull message. What happened became a joke to him. He seriously told the crowd at his show at Park MGM on April 12th, "Since they said I'm responsible for $50 million, my phone has been dead. What are my friends doing when I'm up?" The crowd yelled. Over 6.8 million people recorded, shared, and watched that one moment on TikTok in just one day. On January 28th, 2025, a few months later, Spotify told him that he had just reached 150 million monthly listens. Bruno posted it again and said, "Keep streaming, and I'll be debt-free in no time." When he showed up on stage with Blackpink's Rose at SoFi Stadium 2 weeks later, everyone was shocked. In his first line, "Almost out of debt," within 3 days, that post had 32 million views on Instagram. It became less shocking every time he joked about it. In addition, people shared everything he said. A lot of people heard about his shows and songs for free. Still, there was a reason why so many people believed it in the commencement. It seemed like a big number, $50 million, but it wasn't impossible. Extreme gamblers in Las Vegas often put $50,000 on a single hand of blackjack. Over the course of a few years, Bruno would lose that much money 1,000 times, adding up to $50 million. This was pointed out by people who study gambling harm, who said the math made sense. Bruno has also said in the past that he began gaming before he was old enough and that he lost all of his money in a poker game. It felt even more real after that. On top of that, he allegedly makes $1.5 million per show, for a total of about $90 million a year. Fans couldn't help but picture him living like Sinatra did today. Under the same bright roof, people are making and losing a lot of money.